Hello fellow travelers, my name is SG and welcome to the channel. Today, I want to say thank you to all of you that subscribed, and I've reached 100 subscribers by now, which is amazing. I didn't actually think I would make it this far, this fast, and so I wanted to do a special video for all of you. And so I thought of a theory that would be a fun one to look into and to see if any of you would like me to review any of these cartoons coming along. So, without further ado, here's the Cartoon Network timeline theory. The Cartoon Network timeline theory is that all the cartoons in Cartoon Network, or owned by Cartoon Network, even some Hanna-Barbera, are all existing within the same timeline. That they all are at just different points in history. So I looked into it. I think I have a pretty good map out of where I think these shows do land and where some don't. And it took me to some weird and odd places, but I think for the most part it's a very solid theory, and I just wanted to share it and see what you guys think. So, let's go on and start with my first piece of evidence. Alright, to start off this timeline, we would have to start with Samurai Jack, because his is the story that really affects the main universe. Because we do see in the pilot episode the city of Townsville, a lot of the original posters, a lot of that. So, just that his intervention in this storyline would completely change the course of where the Cartoon Network universe would have went. Also, we have many different references to different cartoons happening throughout, such as the Jetsons' Astro being part of the final season for a brief second. Very interesting, but I can say with confidence that that is the beginning show in the storyline. From there we have Courage the Cowardly Dog. Now that I say because mainly in most of the descriptions I've read is that it is in post-Depression era, which fits because we still have black and white TVs, big box TVs. We do have the middle of nowhere still being a thing. And of course when we do get to the city, it's always a small little area, a broken down truck that Eustace drives. It gives us a lot of hints in that regard. Next would have to be Scooby-Doo. We would see that as being more towards the 70s, more towards the hippie era, so around the 1970s to 80s I would have to say, because you can tell just by the look of Shaggy, Fred, and Scooby that that's really what they're doing. Plus there's the idea that all these businesses are going out of business. Again, going with the real world terms, where during the Vietnam War there wasn't really any places and a lot of homes and businesses were becoming bankrupt. From that we would have to say Johnny Bravo would certainly be very close in front, because Johnny Bravo himself based himself off of pop culture icons such as Elvis and James Dean. You can find the creators even saying that that's pretty much who he's a parody of at that point. There is a lot of suggestions showing that he is pretty much the late 70s going into the 80s. So much of his character relies on the pop culture of the time. A lot of it actually. Coming in next in the late 90s, I would have to say would be Ed and Eddie. And I have to say like either early 90s or late 90s, because when they go to school and even a lot of their homes, we do see computers, but we don't see advanced computers. We see kind of old computers. We see ones with the big backs and just simple ones, and not that many, because most of the characters rely on typewriters more than anything else. We do see a lot of typewriters, a lot of farmland, suggesting that this is pretty much the middle of where technology was really starting to take off. You can even see it with Double D's inventions, that it's not really that advanced compared to what we've seen in most cartoons following. And with that being said, we can see the Kids Next Door being next, because that would have to be the late 90s, early 2000s. We do know that because, again, television has gotten a lot better. Trading cards have become a main thing. Well, not that they weren't before, but even the equipment they use is just a much more advanced version of what Double D used. So I would say this is probably more like 5 years down the line from Ed and Eddie. I wouldn't say that far ahead, actually. And we do see that the ones that kind of exist side by side with Codename Kids Next Door would have to be the Powerpuff Girls and the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, mainly due to the fact that the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy did have a crossover with the Kids Next Door. Then they even mentioned the Powerpuff Girls, and even Ed and Eddie were there. So I guess if you want to say, you could say that Ed and Eddie do exist, maybe just a few years earlier than that. From the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, we get Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I say that comes a little later, mainly because in Ed and Eddie we do have the experience of an imaginary friend on Ed, but we can see it's kind of like a prototype because he's see-through. You can't really experience anything with him, but Eddie does get beaten up by him pretty easily. We also do have the idea that the Powerpuff Girls exist in this timeline because in the pilot episode of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, they said that some kids aren't that creative and that they created Mojo Jojo. A fun Easter egg and a fun throw-in, but it could be that in this universe, it could be that the superheroes such as the Powerpuff Girls and so on and so forth have been televised. And I do have proof on that too, because in Juniper Lee, whoever remembers that cartoon, she talks once that she is watching a Powerpuff Girls marathon, suggesting that maybe in this world that they have made them kind of pop icons. They have made them television stars. I wouldn't say that's a fictional cartoon by any means, because, as I'm about to say, we do have key factors to suggest that superheroes do go on to have their own shows, lines, toys, so on and so forth. And we even do see that in the Powerpuff Girls series, where there is a major collector collecting all of the Powerpuff Girls memorabilia, so on and so forth. Very funny episode, but can be creepy. But another piece to support that would be the next show in this timeline after Juniper Lee, which would have to be Dexter's Laboratory. Now, I don't know if you all remember, but the Powerpuff Girls did crossover episodes, not with Dexter, but with Major Glory, Valhalla, the Incredible Crunk, so on and so forth, where they did appear in an episode, and they did reveal that they do have television shows that is constantly viewed by Dexter and several other characters in the Cartoon Network universe. So that does not disprove the idea that there are cartoons that exist within cartoons, but much more that these are just reality shows in a way, or maybe they're just news coverage, supporting these ideas. Now, before we continue on, I do want to make note of another aspect of this, because there were certain shows that I wanted to cover that a lot of these shows did have little hints at what was going on. We do have talking animals happening in Johnny Bravo, in Scooby, in a lot of these shows, but not in all of them, if I do say so. So I would have to say that coincide the storyline, you have the Looney Tunes, which is acting more of a Hollywood kind of thing. That they are more celebrities more than anything, because that's how they depict themselves even in specials where they acknowledge that they're cartoons. So in this universe, I would say that the Looney Tunes are celebrities who do comedy shows more than anything else. And that we have shows like Evil Con Carne, who, for some reason, animals are starting to get more evolved in this situation. That from the beginning, we do see animals starting to walk and talk like animals, i.e. go back to Johnny Bravo, along with all these other shows. And we see that more with the show Evil Con Carne, who, Hector Con Carne, has put his brain in a jar and placed it on a bear, but he doesn't control the bear. The bear is able to understand people's speech, he's able to act, he's able to walk around and make his own decisions, which is odd because some animals aren't given that. Which really goes into another show called Cow and Chicken, who are able to talk, unlike Boscoff and Evil Con Carne. They're able to go to school, they're able to learn, they're able to act like regular students, and they are able to fraternize with regular people. An interesting concept that we will see constantly evolving along with the regular cartoons. We also see this in My Gym Partner's a Monkey, where there is an entire school just dedicated to animal-like creatures that are able to walk, talk, but they still live in zoos and act like animals sometimes. So that is an interesting feature. Another one with that is Almost Naked Animals, whoever remembers that show, where they are pretty much left humanity to live on this island of hotels where they can be what they want to be. But at the same time, you get this dark idea that they're trying to be humans. They're trying to act like humans, wear clothes like humans, and even kind of, it shows them with no fur, suggesting that they're trying to be human. It's an interesting add-on to this, I would have to say, because now all of a sudden, in the middle of all this, we have animals suddenly evolving faster than humans, or at least at the same pace, just at a slower rate, if that makes sense. Now, this next phase in the Cartoon Network universe is actually where it gets a little trickier, a little more interesting, that it really connects to the rest of the shows, honestly. Do some of you remember that there was a television movie for Dexter's Laboratory which was supposed to act like the original finale, and it was called Dexter's Laboratory's Ego Trip? At the end of that, we see that Dexter becomes very meek in his teenage years, where he suddenly surrenders to Mandark, and Mandark takes over the world. Well, maybe not the world, but at least his area, his hometown, with Dexter working as an underling until he rises up. And with that in mind, I have to say that towards the end, it reveals that Mandark's evil dark matter has completely corrupted the earth, has in itself polluted the world. So that really coincides with another storyline that doesn't seem to fit, but after thinking about it, really does, which is whatever happened to Robot Jones. And that isn't a question, that's just the name of the show. Robot Jones, as the creator said, was there to participate in a public school setting, to understand the people, to understand kids and how they grow up, along with adults. Now, if we look at the setting, it's completely dilapidated land. It is not an attractive looking area. You could tell that it is not as it should be, like we see in Ed and Eddie or even the Powerpuff Girls. The land seems to literally be a desolate area. Maybe not bad in their terms, but they don't even seem to realize it. It seems much more related to Courage the Cowardly Dog than anything else in this timeline. But that's not the important part I want to mention. Yet, that is that the creator admits that the end of Robot Jones' storyline should have been that he was sent there to monitor humans and see if they're worthy of working alongside or being taken over. We didn't get that conclusion to him in any sense, but if I were to add it, I would say that Robot Jones' ultimate conclusion was that he should work with people. The land itself has grown tainted thanks to Mandark's dark matter issue, and now the land itself is fading away. The water is getting polluted, air is getting darker. You can tell that things aren't good, which really shows that in whatever happened to Robot Jones, and even the lower class of people are treated kind of like slaves. It kind of coincides with one another. Plus, thanks to Dexter's Laboratory, such as his computer, we can see that machines are starting to think for themselves. They are starting to have opinions. They are starting to help each other. And whatever happened to Computer in that movie, in the future at least? Because she's obviously not there. She doesn't respond to Dexter as a teenager or even as an adult. So that is a very interesting red herring in this, isn't it? But that will come back again later on. For now, we're continuing on with this timeline. Pollution's gotten so bad that people have started to wear masks, such as, contamination mask. But in certain areas, they have just started to become a fashion statement, or they have started to be used as regular use. Now everybody wears a mask all the time now, but some use it for, I would say, recreational purposes. And with that, we bring in Mucha Lucha. If you notice it, none of the characters ever reveal their face. Masks have also become this kind of signature, mainly due to luchador wrestling, where it'd be considered a great dishonor to even remove one's mask by another wrestler. But I think it goes a little deeper here, because in one of the episodes, Ricochet's grandpa loses his retainer or dentures, and they have to go find it. And where did they go to look for it? In a garbage dump in the middle of the ocean, again suggesting that there is something more to this pollution theory than there is anywhere else. And that's just a connection that I made myself. If you think otherwise, please let me know in the comments section. Now, I want to say that the population or the pollution got so bad that they had to start moving little factions of the population. Some had to move off-world, i.e. Space Ghost and your other space-themed cartoons along the way. Some went underwater, such as Jabberjaw, considering that there are so few human creatures in Atlantis or underwater. But I think the most common one was that most had to retreat into the sky in domes above whatever the pollution had made, i.e. the Jetsons and such. Because we never really do see why that they're in the sky, other than they just are in the future, so on and so forth. But I do believe that the land was fixed at some point. And the reason I think that is because this is barely the middle of our timeline. Something had to come and fix the land as we know it. Because even in Ego Trip, we do see that Dexter, as an old man, who may have dementia at this point, there is a land with green trees, flowers, and all that. But for that to happen, I do think that a hero was created by Mother Earth herself. And that had to be Captain Planet. Captain Planet was created just to destroy pollution created by industries and business. And what do we see Mandark create? A big business that started pollution and controlling of the masses. And I think once Dexter had defeated, well, not Dexter, Dee Dee had defeated Mandark, I think that gave the Earth just enough power to be able to try and fix itself, creating a herald or a catalyst to start reform, stopping other industries and other businesses from polluting the Earth, i.e. Captain America. It was Captain Planet. He had started to replant trees, started cleaning the oceans, started encouraging other people to help save the land in and of itself. But I do think that it wasn't enough. The population had gone. People had already been suffering through major transformations, including animals. So the only thing he could do was probably restart what he could. And that in itself waned on him, along with the population existing at this time, pretty much rewinding time and starting a new Stone Age, if you will, creating in time the Flintstones era we see during the Flintstones. Now that makes sense to me because we do see a lot of modern pop culture references coming out of the Flintstones along with technology, but this time powered by animals. And the animals seem intelligent too at this point, talking to the camera or even being the ones who may have created these technologies that wouldn't have been known by cavemen. Because we do see TVs, we see ironing boards, we see even dinosaurs acting like cranes and such. So it would make sense that time didn't just restart, it more or less was rebooted, I would have to say. Now, I do believe that the Flintstones was probably the start of this reboot era, but I'm willing to more call it the Mystic era, because this was the time that it seemed magic and technology were coexisting. Because if my timeline is correct, then after the Flintstones, there should not be that big of a technological advancement. Much more, there should be more of a medieval time than anything else. And with that, we do have a few series that fit that description. And with that, we have He-Man, we have the Herculoids, and we also have Thundar. With these, we can insist that technology and magic started making a rise at that point, helping people coexist and fight off darker forces that came from the aftermath of the pollution in the area, such as Skeletor and all these other characters. But we also see that animals, after the Flintstone era, started evolving a little faster than most too. Because from that we get the Thundercats, who very similar to He-Man, lived within the same area. There was even several crossovers, both in cartoon and in books, that suggest that Lion-O and the Thundercats existed the same time as He-Man and She-Ra, suggesting that the technology was taking more of a backseat to mysticism, to magic. And from that, we move forward with the timeline to meet the mighty Magiswords, who, wizards of all kinds, or maybe even blacksmiths, combine both technology and magic to make different swords similar to the Swords of Omens and He-Man's sword. And started making these more cartoonish, more variety-based, like swords. And you can tell that they are based in magic, but they feel more like they are based in technology more than anything else. Leading into a more relaxed era, into more of a where we're going from a time that was a barbarian-esque age, and it started dwindling down into what we would call a mix of a human and animal age, where they started living coexistence, started having trades, where I would say that it is similar to the 1800s, where people would take on apprentices and they were able to start living as under a master. And where that comes in, we have Chowder. Chowder is definitely the example that time was moving forward in a direction similar to our own, but it was accompanied not just by humans, it was accompanied by animals of different species and cultures mixing together. Because even now, we can't really tell what Chowder himself was. He seemed like a cat, but he also seemed like a bunny, or maybe even a bear. I want to go with a cat-bear kind of thing. But anyway, we also got that there are humans in this world too. We do see several off and on. And I think that they did clean up the river and the lakes, but there are still several islands out there covered in pollution, or at least trash. People started thinking that these were islands that were made of candy. That's where I think that this is where the misadventures of Flapjack is, coexisting alongside the world of Chowder, where Chowder is taking place mainly on land, or depending on if you go with the show's canon, on someone's back. You can tell that there is a vaster ocean out there, and that's where Flapjack is residing in one of these port areas where humans mainly reside in. You can tell that they're not exactly living the greatest, but they're there, and they're traveling across the seas to see if they can find these little islands they think are made of candy, but might just be made of trash. As things go, I do think that magic, such as the Sword of Omens and all that, started becoming lesser used. Was known, but started being just rarely used by a certain amount of people. As we knew from the Mighty Magiswords, you can make it, but they won't be perfect, so only a select few could do it. But that's not to say that there aren't people out there still searching for it. There are some people that become kind of like an Indiana Jones-like character, who go looking for magical items, who try to find them, whether it be a magic lamb statue or something of the similar, or maybe it's just a magic crown that makes you into an Iceman. Who knows? Simon Pentecost was one of those people, and he lived in a bit of a steampunk era himself. We could tell by the blimps in the background, this being more of an English kind of land, or just early 1900s America. And we can tell that from this started another war, as things go. But this one was more of a nuclear war. This was one that started the Lich, which brought in the world of Adventure Time, another 1,000 years in. Magic started rising again, but it started coexisting even more with technology. Now we have this era of both magic and technology coinciding one in another. Surprisingly though, this is not the end of our timeline. We do see that there is a high chance that Mau Mau, Heroes of Pure Heart, shortly came after Finn and Jake had stopped adventuring or passed on as the story goes, which we know lead a lot of way to a lot of different magic disasters, wars, judging by the timeline Adventure Time gives, which I might do one of these days. Depends on if it's requested or not. And from there we do see that there is a big gap from there leading on to the last show of this timeline. And that show I do think is OKKO Let's Be Heroes, because that one has so many references to almost every cartoon there was, including Adventure Time. I do think a lot of the settings in OKKO matches that of Adventure Time, such as the deserts matching the Danger Zone. There are a lot of callbacks and a lot of future references that can be placed in there, and I do think that it is a timeline that needs to be worked on, but I do say that there is definitely a certainty to it that OKKO is the final show in the Ultimate Cartoon Network timeline. Now I know what you're thinking. Earlier I said whatever happened to Robot Jones was going to be a bigger part of the storyline than we think, and I'm going to answer that right now. For, like I said, if this timeline stands the way it does now, then it means that Dexter's computer existed before the Jetsons, and even maybe even Bobbert's from The Amazing World of Gumball. And I think that makes sense because computer existed before Robot Jones, and if Robot Jones downloaded his personality to all the machines, that means they all pretty much take after him after computer. And you can kind of see that his personality is similar to the computer from the Jetsons. You can see that his personality matches that of Bobbert, and you can see a lot of other computerized characters such as Speed Buggy does kind of fit Whatever Happened to Robot Jones' Innocence-like character, and just his wisdom responses, that his life experience as a person has helped shape what these robots think, who they are, and how they ultimately act and want to be cared for by humanity. Now, there is one outlier I have to take note of, because it's not that he's a small part. In fact, I'd say he's one of the bigger parts of Cartoon Network as a whole. He is involved in every aspect of Cartoon Network and has shaped a lot of the heroes and villains that we see today. That being the newest addition to the Cartoon Network timeline, Villainous, aka Black Hat. Black Hat has shown that he is aware of everything that's happened in Cartoon Network's timeline, in every timeline, because he even confirmed that time does reboot itself, thanks to his commentary of Evil Pops' demise. He can tell you that time did in fact repeat several times, and he's been there to witness it. He's witnessing it right now, as a matter of fact. So, I didn't include Black Hat in this timeline, not because I don't think he's an important part, but because he doesn't need to be an important part. He is an important part. He already is watching, and he's already involved in the storyline, as far as we know. And he is existing with outside the universe, outside of time, just biding his time and watching. For what reason, I don't know. And it scares me to think that he might be watching us right now as I'm making this video. So, that's my opinion on Villainous. And sort of my connection to regular show, I guess, on that one. Because, like I said, Evil Pops did say time does often reboot itself time and time again. And with that, I could say that the official Cartoon Network timeline, at least in my headcanon, would be broken down into 4 different eras. The early era, consisting of Samurai Jack, Courage, Scooby, Johnny, Evil Con Carne, Eddie, Cow and Chicken, Foster's, Juniper Lee, Dexter being a key component, and Whatever Happened to Robot Jones, leading into our second era, the Polluted era, which goes from Robot Jones to Mucha Lucha, Jabberjaw, Jetsons, Space Ghost, and of course ending on the Flintstones, going into the Renewal era, consisting of the Flintstones, He-Man, and Thundercats, leading all the way to the Mighty Magiswords, Chowder, and Flapjack, and ultimately having another natural disaster, such as the nuclear war of Adventure Time, causing it to go to Mau Mau, and ultimately ending it at OKKO Let's Be Heroes. Man, that was a mouthful, and I admit that that is a very, very long shot on my end, but I do believe that there is some leeway in this, that this definitely feels right, and that please leave your opinions on this. If I missed a show that you really like, or I just forgot one, please leave it down in the comments. I would really like to hear and see where you place it in the timeline. Or if you have a whole different timeline that you would give, I would really like to hear it, because, you know, this isn't a solid opinion on my choice. I mean, yes, this is something that I believe is correct, but I'm always open-minded enough to maybe come back and revisit this. Maybe the next time, maybe 200 views, huh? Make it 200 subscribers, and maybe I'll do a revamp and see what we have then. But until then, this is the timeline I'm working with, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you again for watching, and thank you so much for the 100 views. Well, 105 at this point. I really do appreciate it, and I will be trying to do better material and better cartoons, movies, comics, manga, whatever comes to mind. And thanks again, and I hope to see you next time. See ya, and have a great day.